Hello and welcome to Access Asia with me, Jenny Shin. Let's bring you some headlines from around the continent. Pakistan steps into its role as a mediator between the US and Iran, brokering the 2-week ceasefire agreement announced on Wednesday. Islamabad now hoping to steer the talks towards a lasting peace deal. India reels from gas supply shortages brought on by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, as many Indians in Gulf countries remain stranded, unable to afford flights back home. And the Artemis II flyby puts the spotlight back on the space race between the US and China. We'll be discussing the two superpowers' lunar ambitions in the program. Well, Pakistan has emerged as a key mediator between the US and Iran, playing a pivotal role in brokering the 2-week ceasefire announced early Wednesday morning. With this agreement, Islamabad may have pulled off its most significant diplomatic victory in years, as France 24's Olivia Salazar-Winspear tells us.
Applause for the man of the hour. Shehbaz Sharif was congratulated by his cabinet after the Pakistani Prime Minister brokered a 2-week ceasefire between the US and Iran.
I would like to thank both the Iranian and American leadership for accepting my request and acknowledging Pakistan's seriousness and sincerity for the sake of peace. This was not an ordinary thing.
An extraordinary coup, but very much in line with Pakistan's international policy. Islamabad has been courting the Trump administration since the US president's re-election. And it's not just a win for the PM. Pakistan's de facto rulers in the military were decisive in securing the ceasefire, specifically Army Chief Asim Munir. Known for his long-standing relationship with Iran's Revolutionary Guards, Munir has also found favour in Washington, where he was received at the White House last year by a president who called him his, quote, favourite field marshal.
I think that Munir reflects the type of qualities that Trump admires. I mean, I'm just being very candid. Munir is a strong man, and that's something that Trump would certainly support. He is someone with significant levels of power. All Pakistan army chiefs are powerful, but I would argue that it's been a long time since you had an army chief in Pakistan, particularly during a period of putative civilian rule, where the army chief is incredibly powerful, as Munir is now. But what's notable about the current army chief is that he has faced some significant challenges internally, particularly in terms of public opinion. Given what has happened in Pakistan over the last few years, particularly an increase in repression, as well as the imprisonment of Imran Khan, who's a very popular former prime minister.
Munir's power was enshrined in November with a constitutional amendment that grants him lifelong immunity from prosecution and tips Pakistan towards what many say is tantamount to martial law. Islamabad's now hosting further negotiations, positioning itself as a strategic partner for key regional players such as Saudi Arabia, neighbouring Iran, and even China.
Well, in the weeks leading up to the ceasefire, the impact of the war in the Middle East was felt far beyond the region, reaching countries like India. The South Asian nation depends heavily on imports of cooking gas or LPG, much of it sourced from Middle Eastern countries. The war has also put at risk the lives of millions of Indians living and working in Gulf countries, with many unable to return home due to unaffordable flight costs. Our correspondents on the ground filed this next report for us.
Queuing up for gas, a New Delhi hardship for 330 million Indian households of New Delhi residents. India imports around 60% of its cooking gas, nearly 90% of which comes from countries like Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Iraq. As the Iran-US war gripped the Middle East and Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz, the country has witnessed shortages. Day after day, Meera Devi has stood for hours in long queues to receive a gas cylinder.
I can't cook food for my children. They're hungry. I've been standing here since this morning. This gas shortage is causing many problems for us. I don't know what to do.
Between March 12th and April 7th, India has negotiated with Iran for the safe passage of 8 ships carrying almost 350,000 tons of LPG, equivalent to less than 4 days of India's daily consumption. Ram Mohan Das has seen his workload decrease.
Customers are getting worried and keep calling to ask when they'll receive their gas. Earlier, I used to deliver 40 to 45 cylinders a day, but now it's dropped to 30 to 35.
On March 26th, the Indian government declared it had cooking gas stocks for 30 days. But small street food vendors like Vishal have had to secure cylinders from the black market, where they are sold for over twice the price.
This is the last cylinder. If it runs out, I don't know if I will get another one. There are no cylinders available, that's what we know. The ones we bought on the black market, before it was for 15 euros, now it's 40 euros. I purchased this 2 weeks ago for that much. I don't know what the prices will be in the coming days. It could go up to 50 euros.
The shortage is even pushing vulnerable families outside of the city. Muhammad Akhtar, a migrant worker from Bihar, is now planning to return to his village after working in Delhi for 25 years.
क्या हुआ खाने में क्या बन रहा है और गैस है कि नहीं है थोड़ा बहुत है पता नहीं कब खत्म हो जाएगी तनख्वाह पैसे कम मिलते हैं और
I don't earn much, and gas cylinders are becoming expensive. In many places, they're being sold on the black market. I can't afford to buy one. That's why I want to return to my village. At least there, we can use wood and coal to cook and eat.
Close to 10 out of 15 million Indians working abroad are in Gulf countries, and their remittances accounted for almost 38% of India's total $137 billion inflow in 2024. As these countries became embroiled in the conflict, Indians were amongst those who paid the price. Ashish Kumar, the captain of an oil tanker, went missing soon after a drone attack on his vessel near Oman's Khasab port on 28 February. A few days later, authorities informed his family that skeletal remains were found in his cabin. They still struggle to come to terms with their loss.
We're just praying to God that he should somehow be found alive, because I can't accept that he's gone.
In a village in a neighboring district, members from almost every household have migrated to the Gulf for work. Their families have been anxious for the safety of their loved ones. Shamsa Khatun calls her husband thrice a day. He works in a gas plant in Ras Laffan in Qatar, which was struck by an Iranian missile on March 19th.
We're very scared. He is the man of the house after all. What might happen to him while he's abroad? No one knows. Because of this, we're unable to sleep at night. We're very concerned. The children always ask, "Where is our father? How is he?"
As instability looms in the region, India's significant dependence on Gulf countries continues, threatening the livelihood of millions of Indians.
Now, we've all been admiring the pictures from NASA's Artemis II mission. It's been more than 50 years since humans have come so close to the moon. The flyby shows the US is in the lead when it comes to its lunar ambitions, but it doesn't settle the race just yet, as China is pursuing its own ambitious space program. Well, Camille Knight is in the studio with me. Good to see you, Camille.
Hi, Jenny.
So how real is this space race, and how well is China doing?
Well, Artemis II just shows how committed the US is to this space race, but while Russia's fallen behind, China's really emerged as the main competitor here. Both of their eyes firmly set on the moon. They're both hoping to set up outposts around the moon's south pole and tap into some of the precious resources there. That includes water ice, for example, which is mostly found in craters in the south pole. Getting hold of this water would be a real game changer, because the idea is that it could potentially be turned into drinking water for occupants of a lunar base, or split into hydrogen and oxygen for rocket fuel. This means future spacecraft could refuel on the moon, which makes deep space travel much cheaper. The moon is a lot closer to Earth than Mars, for example. So think of it as a sort of potential future base for deeper space travel. Whoever establishes a permanent presence there will have significant influence over how that territory is used and governed, and Washington and Beijing are obviously very aware of that.
So how far along is China exactly? I mean, can they credibly compete with NASA as things currently stand?
Well, China's space agency shares relatively little publicly, so the progress can be hard to assess. But later this year, China plans to launch Change 7, its seventh robotic lunar mission targeting the moon's south pole. And beyond that, China has a crewed moon landing in its sights for 2030. NASA is targeting 2028, so 2 years before. But of course, we know delays are common, so we shouldn't take either of those data as absolute guarantees. Now, on the robotic side, China's record is strong. It's the only nation to have landed on and retrieved samples from the far side of the moon, but its crewed lunar program is still very much on paper. The US has the more matured crewed space flight program, but does face real execution risk in the next 2 years, particularly when it comes to the lunar lander. It's worth noting that China's centralized structure does give it an advantage in that it can fund and plan over decades without the political disruptions that have repeatedly set NASA back.
Right, so now we all remember the rivalry between the US and the Soviet Union, but how has the space race evolved or changed since the 1960s?
Well, the players are different and the goals are different. Obviously, Russia having fallen behind, its space agency only just recently postponing all its launches to the moon. India's in the picture, though it's not quite in the same league. And while China innovates in-house, private companies are now playing a huge role in driving the US's progress. You've got SpaceX and Blue Origin building the hardware that NASA couldn't do alone. And speaking of companies, let's take a listen to NASA's Dr. Laurie Glaze on what the future might look like.
We are really working to not only develop a sustained NASA presence on the moon, but to help generate a lunar economy that's building on commercial capabilities. And so we very well could see commercial activities going on at the moon with other companies visiting on a routine basis. In the future, we hope to use all of that, what we learn from the moon, for helping us go to Mars. And so we could see a very different Mars as well.
So exciting or terrifying, depending on your perspective. One company called Interloon, for example, aims to mine for helium on the moon and sell it back on Earth within the next 5 to 7 years. China, of course, is pursuing a different path, one more driven by state rather than market. But it's important to note that this isn't just racing against other countries now. We're seeing the moon evolve into very much a new marketplace driven by private competition.
All right, Camille, very interesting stuff. Thank you very much indeed for that. And thank you to you for watching this edition of Access Asia.